Hello, welcome to Small Table Big Talk, a show where we talk about everything and anything to inspire, educate, and just open your mind to the possibilities out there. So today I'm really excited because I'm going to talk to you about, or we are going to talk to you about a topic that is trending all over the place. So we're going to talk about now that you have moved, or as the Nigerians like to say, jackpot. You've left your country, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, Ghana, wherever you are, and you've come to the UK. How are you going to get a job here if you don't already have a job? So we're going to explore that topic in a great deal of detail. With me to discuss this fascinating topic is my friend, Francis Benedict. Welcome,
Thank you.
Kan is the perfect person to talk to us about this because Kan has over 20 years experience in various industries and she's very senior. But I'm not going to steal her thunder. I'm going to give her the opportunity to tell us a bit more about herself. Kan, tell us a bit about you.
Thank you, Yudee, for having me. You should have stolen my thunder anyway. I wouldn't have minded at all. So I've been here for roughly about 20 years. And you're right, I have worked in different industries and I have had to actually rebuild my career a couple of times for various, personal and professional reasons. So having that understanding of coming and how do I start, what do I do is something that I think will be a good topic for me to talk about. My area of specialization, so to speak, is delivery, whether you call it delivery, implementation, project management. And that's all I've done. I haven't really done anything else, but I've done it in different industries, in different countries. This is my third time in the UK.
Wow.
So I did the, finish uni, come here, went to the US, went back to Nigeria, came back here, left again. So, I've done it
everywhere.
Yes, I've done it a few times. And there are things that you should know, but, that's me in a nutshell, in terms of who I am and what I bring to the table, so to speak.
Amazing.
Thank
and you're
you.
at the table.
Small table.
Small
Yes.
table, big talk.
Yes.
So let's get into it. So imagine this individual who's coming from, say, Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, wherever. They've come into the UK. So we're not really now talking about people who already have a job, who've come in and they already have a job offer, they're already working. We're talking about people who've come in and they're trying to find their feet. Where do you start? What are the sort of things that people should think about, and what are the sort of things they should consider in terms of this?
Okay. So a number of things, not in any order of priority. The first one is you have to have a CV. Everything in this country is motivated by a CV. Even the jobs that are supposedly what we call the artisanal jobs in Nigeria. Even if you're going for a carpentry job, they're going to ask you for a CV.
True.
So you have to have a CV. You have to know what the typical UK CV looks like. And for a lot of people coming from back home, when I say back home, I mean anyone from any country in Africa, the concept of taking your CV and narrowing it down to 2 or 3 pages.
I know,
is a daunting thing.
Yeah.
But that's something you have to do. You've got to take your CV or your experience and bring it down to 2, maximum 3 pages. So that's the first thing. You have to have a CV. I would encourage people to actually spend some time looking at the different industries. One of the traps that our people fall into when they come here is they speak to a friend or a relative and the person says, oh, you know what, if you want to get a job quickly, there are certain industries you should get into. Care work, manufacturing is another one, either in a factory or warehouse operative. Driving is another one. There are quite a number of people who are doing things like Uber and Bolt. The services industry, restaurants, working in places like the supermarket, Asda, and things like that. Now, there's nothing wrong with any of those jobs, okay? And there is a big demand for people in those sectors. But something that you should keep in mind is that if you go down that road, sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to come back out.
Absolutely.
And if you're somebody who say, back home you worked in a bank.
Yes.
And you get here and because you want a job, you get a job in, Sainsbury's, for instance. Nothing wrong with working in Sainsbury's again, but then how do you then navigate your way back after 2 or 3 years of working in Sainsbury's to you see a job on some website in Lloyd's and you think, I do have the experience, I do have the qualifications for this. How do you then make that crossover?
Absolutely.
You know, so those are some of the things that people have got to think about as well. Another thing that I'd say people should think about is think about what it is to actually interview here.
Absolutely.
Right? Interviewing in this country is very different from interviewing, you know.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, it's a
So
very different.
true.
It's a very different thing. The prep for the interview, the kind of questions you're going to be asked. I'll give you an example. When I was working in Nigeria, when somebody comes for an interview and you say to them, tell me about yourself, typically what they'll do is they'll say, oh, you know, my name is Yudee, I am X.
I am from Yudee
I'm
local
from
government.
Yudee local government. I am married, I have 3 children. You know, I'm 25 years old, but that's not what that question means here. It means something totally different. Here, what they're looking for is they're looking for you to summarize your professional career. So when somebody says, tell me about myself, tell me about yourself, well, I've been in the project management industry for 20 years. I started out as a business analyst, and I was working on this project where the project manager quit. And my boss said to me, would you like to try your hand at that? And I did, and the rest is history. I enjoyed it very much, but I wanted to solidify my background, so I went to City University and I did a master's in information systems. See? Very different.
You just covered it off, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so when I interview these guys in Nigeria and they say this, I'd stop and I'd say, you know what, I have your CV in front of me. All
I know
those
your
things
story.
you said,
I
I
know
can
it.
see them. They're all there. You don't have to tell me that.
Yeah.
So it's doing that. And I know a lot of times when people transplant themselves here, they don't have a lot of money.
True.
So if we ask them to do certain things, they might think, oh, you know, why should I do that? But if you do have a little bit of money, consider having your CV looked at by somebody professional.
Yeah.
Okay. Consider having somebody help you prep for interviews.
Yeah.
There are loads of career consultants out there, actually, that start from the very, very reasonably priced to the
To
ones
really
that are,
expensive.
you know, the ones that are thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. But if you can afford one of these people, at least the first time, let them look at your CV. Then you can then take your CV from there, you know. It's things like that. It's things like, we come from a culture, for instance, where we don't look each other in the eye.
I know. It's
not-
almost like,
you know, it's like if my mom is talking to me, my mom is talking to me, I'm looking down. If I wouldn't bother you. If I look up, my mom will be like, I'm talking to you. But here, looking down and looking from side to side is considered a sign of being shifty.
It's a cultural thing,
It's a cultural
isn't it? It's a
thing.
cultural thing.
So there's some things that you've got to train yourself to do. When you're in an interview and somebody's interviewing you, you look the person in the eye.
Absolutely.
You know, and it took me years to actually get comfortable doing that. And there are actually times when I'm talking to people where I actually notice my face starting
Sort of
to
drop, drift away, yeah,
drop, you know.
yeah.
So, you know, there's so much we can talk about, but those are some of the things that people need to think about. You know, prepping yourself by having the CV,
Yeah.
right? Making a decision as to what industry do I
That's
want to
really important.
what
Yes.
industry do I want to go into? And if I decide to go into a particular industry as a stopgap,
Yes.
what are my plans
To actually come out.
extricate myself from that, come out and go in the direction that I want to, right? And then things like, how do I interview? Okay, I've submitted my CV. I now have an interview. What do I do? How do I prep? What are the kind of things I need to know before before the interview? You know, so these are. I mean, any of these things we can spend hours talking about them. But these are 3 things that are at the top of my head. I'd say definitely you need to spend some time thinking through those things.
So let's unpack one of the things you've talked about in a little detail. So imagine someone who's coming, as you said, a lot of these people who come into the country, they don't necessarily have the economic strength to do anything significant or wait to train or do any of that. So they do get into these careers as jobs. Let's not call them careers because many of them are not really careers, they're jobs. There's top gaps. Let's imagine a person who is in that kind of stopgap, say they're doing a warehouse job, but they were a bank manager in back home, and they're now here doing a warehouse job, and you're thinking, how do I make that transition from here and coming to what I know that is what I'm looking for? Maybe I want to become a project manager or a business analyst. How would you, what sort of ideas and tips would you give to people to move if they were already in that position? What would you say about that?
So there are organizations that help. There are organizations that give training that help you to make that leap. Not to sort of like trumpet, but you have a really great organization that does that.
Really not rocket science.
Really not rocket science. And you can do things like that.
Yeah.
You can also make a conscious decision to have two separate CVs. Okay. In fact, actually, all of these recruiters tell you that you have to have a CV. You have to tailor your CV to every single job. So you can make that decision that, okay, you know what? I know this is a stopgap. I need to put food on the table, a roof over my head, and things like that. But I'm going to actually have a CV that actually focuses on the things that I'm looking for. And that's a CV that you put out there. Something else that it's not something we do a lot of back home, but is worth considering is doing voluntary work.
Absolutely, good one.
That is in that area that you're interested in. Speak to people. Everybody in this country, and I say this all the time, everybody in this country has a network.
Yes.
They may not necessarily know how powerful their network is, but everybody has a network. And it's not just the person you know. If I come to you now and I say, Yudee, I need such and such, you may not be able to do that for me, but you might have somebody in your network that may be able to do that for me. So looking into your network as well and say, look, you know what, I'm interested in the banking industry. I'm currently working, in a warehouse, but I need some exposure, whether it's through voluntary work, whether it's through courses, whether it's through somebody mentoring me. Those are some of the things that people need to do. We need to get outside of this idea that there are certain industries that are closed off to us.
This is so true.
There are no industries that are closed off to us. It might require a little bit more heavy lifting to get into it, but there is no industry that's closed off. You can come from wherever it is, Zimbabwe, Algeria, Tunisia, Nigeria, where you had a career in banking, and you can come here. Yes, you may not be able to transition in at that same level, but you can still get into banking. And in fact, talking about this, there is, I'm just reminded of an article I read in The Guardian the other day. There is actually an organization funded by the General Medical Council that helps medical doctors requalify in this country who have come, from African countries, helps them requalify, helps them do their CV, helps them get that initial job so that they can get, into that particular profession. Because look, let's be blunt. Okay? Almost every profession in this country is desperate for people.
Absolutely correct. True.
Desperate for people. And you just have to know, how do I get into it? So again, something that I would encourage people to do, research. Google is your friend.
Oh yes, true.
Google is your friend. Use Google, go out there, put in the thing and whatever it is, and you'll be amazed at the number of resources that are available to you, and you don't always have to pay for them.
Absolutely correct. YouTube as well. YouTube has a lot going on there. There's a lot of free content that you can get on YouTube. But it's just something you said which was really quite interesting about how that, like, there isn't any industry that's closed off to us. Sometimes you talk to our people and it's almost like you hear them say things like, oh, that's for certain people. There isn't. As long as you have the legal rights to be in this country, in fact, there isn't any role that you cannot do with the right level of training